to see the world more clearly, to heal ourselves, to celebrate the joyful things, to feel gratitude, to be inspired, to remember ourselves and remember what we actually intended. Well, these are all the kinds of things that I have seen and experienced personally that cash crop poems, or what we're calling cash crop poems, can really help us do. And that's exactly what we're going to talk about today in this edition of Poetry, Passion, and Pleasure podcast with your host, Dale Byron. This is where we use and hitch up powerful poems to our everyday lives and the joys and challenges we face. So, again, a cash crop poem is one that we go back to time and time again. I've worked with so many people over the years in group settings and one-on-one settings, helping them find just the right poem for their circumstances and for their needs. And today, this is what I'm calling the cash crop poem. And let's start with a little poem with that title, Cash Crop Poem, Cash Crop Poetry. Let's kick off in this way. These are the words. Here's how the poem goes. These are the words you can take to the bank. These are the words you can take to the bank. Stories harvested without those boring parts. Tales that are short, satisfying, and surprising. A payroll for remembering what your body needs, the renewing and rebalancing of your soul's CDs. Suddenly understanding the heart's gold standard, suddenly understanding the heart's gold standard, growing deposits of data into compounding wisdom, healing the losses that defy any simple accounting, creating an exchange of currency that is priceless, turning gratitude into the new coin of the realm, investing every last dime in a joyous revelation. Turning gratitude into the new coin of the realm, investing every last dime into a joyous revelation. Well, this is a little piece that I wrote a little earlier this year. And though there are parts of this that lean toward humor and even a little tongue-in-cheekness, it's a very serious message that I am working with here. And it occurs to me that cash crop poems are words that we can take to the bank because they do these things we're talking about, these things that that we need doing. I mean, have you felt the excitement when somebody, and not just a poem, again, remember, poems are just stories without the boring parts, as we've said many times on this podcast. So this kind of insight from, as William Stafford used to say, words that got lucky. You know, it can be a poem, a story, it can be a song, but these things that when they arrive in our lives and give us that jolt of understanding, give us that jolt of healing, that surprising inspiration, and ways that we can feel more grateful in the world. When that happens, we are totally excited. And again, I'm just naming this a cash crop poem. At their most extreme, we say we love them. And of course, many of us have poems and short little stories and songs in particular that we've loved all our lives. And I've also worked with people where maybe they had lost track of a particular poem or a particular poet, but when they heard one, they heard it again, then they fell in love all over again. And I mentioned in these lines that these are the words you can take to the bank, stories harvested without those boring parts. We just talked about that. Tales that are short, satisfying, and surprising. And I want to talk a little bit about that in terms of the poems that we most love the cash crop poems. First of all, the fact that a poem is short gives it a much better chance of being really good. Have you noticed? And also, even long poems like The Leaves of Grass or very long poems, often we can take small sections of them, or T.S. Eliot poems that are long, and we can fall in love with smaller sections. Not that we can't love the whole poem, but again, a shorter poem or a shorter piece is much more likely to become something that we love, in my estimation. Also, it must be satisfying. All I'm saying there is that it must do something. It must carry the freight. It must come into our lives when we need healing, when we need to remember our purpose, when we need to understand, when we need inspiration. That makes that poem one that we love and one that is satisfying. And finally, a poem must be surprising, in the sense that that is that way, the idea that we are lighter, enlightened, and that surprise gives us that little jolt of delight, and we suddenly see the world in a new and more interesting and more grounded and more connected and more whole way. Well, these are the surprises that good cash crop poems bring to us. I've mentioned on this podcast before that if the poet is not surprised, even in the writing of their own poems, then very likely the reader will not be either. This is another nod to the idea of surprise. So our cash crop poems are going to almost always be shorter. They're going to be satisfying in some way that meets our human needs, meets our need for wholeness, and they are going to be surprising. And I think that when they are working at their best, again, as we've said, a poem helps us remember ourselves in a new way. They help us understand something, not stand over it, but understand something in a deeper way, some new wisdom, some new way that we understand ourselves and others. They help us grow, of course. They help us rebalance ourselves, not taking life so personally sometimes, and rebalance analysis and action, even rebalance social media intake, which we often need. They help inspire us with the beauty of the world. Praise poems do this and give us hope and fresh perspectives. Of course, poetry helps us with gratitude, as we've said, to understand and to feel life as gift. And then finally, of course, poems can help us in our healing process, in our grieving the losses that we all experience. So, cash crop poetry. These are the words you can take to the bank. Stories harvested without those boring parts. Tales that are short, satisfying, and surprising. A payroll for remembering what your body needs. The renewing and rebalancing of your soul's certificates of deposit. Suddenly understanding the heart's gold standard. Growing deposits of data into compounding wisdom, healing the losses that defy any simple accounting, creating an exchange of currency that is priceless, turning gratitude into the new coin of the realm, investing every last dime into a joyous revelation, a joyous revelation. Well, that is a wrap. As always, thank you so much for your listening ear. I so appreciate it. If you know someone that you might refer the podcast to, please, by all means, do that. Like, like this, the podcast, or leave a comment. Anything that might be appropriate in something you'd like to do. So again, thanks so much for being here, and until next time and next poem, take good care of yourself, and please, if you can, someone else too.